So I'm curious, how many of you would be willing to drink a glass of household bleach? Nobody. Okay. How many of you are willing to get angry? Oh, a few more hands went up. Drinking concentrated bleach can have some strong impacts on this one life alone. It can really mess up your gastrointestinal tract. It can even lead to death. But anger, on the other hand, can lead to a lot worse, can't it? And yet, look at what just happened. So while anger may not kill us in this life, it can unsettle us. It can certainly disfigure us. We all look a lot different when we're angry, our faces. And it can injure us in this life as well as lead to serious suffering in countless future lives. It depends on many factors like the object that we're angry with and the intensity of our anger, the frequency of our anger, and things like that. So we've had quite an emphasis on anger at the Abbey here in the last few months. The current Sharing the Dharma Day is going through the book Working on Anger, and so is the Monday night meditation class. We've just gone through the Perfection of Patience in the Middle Length Lamrim with Venerable Kadra, and we spend a long time looking at the disadvantages of anger. And then in the recent Medicine Buddha retreat, we also spent 3 days looking at the disadvantages of anger, the definition of anger, the results of anger, and the antidotes to anger as well. So we've been focusing on it a lot, which is good because it has so many detrimental side effects. Yet I notice that I still get angry. Don't you? This is a problem. Clearly, it's not due to a lack of education. Intellectually, I know clearly the results of that anger can bring, and I'm also highly motivated. This year in particular, I'm focusing on wanting to work on anger and reduce it a lot in my life. But often the irritation or anger that arises in my mind happens so fast. It's almost as if it's unconscious. It's faster. Well, it's faster than the speed of light. We determined that recently. I accept that I'm strongly habituated to anger from having done it in many past lives and also being conditioned to it in my family upbringing. But when I compare my attitude to drinking a glass of bleach with my attitude about getting angry, there's a disconnect that I'm not comfortable with. That tells me that I'm not yet familiar enough with the disadvantages of anger. And many of these disadvantages, we perceive them daily, right? We know them. We've made lists of them. But I have to keep reminding myself, and Mary Grace and I were talking about this the other day, because Venerable had us do an exercise at DFF where we looked at, physically, what happens to me when I get angry? There are a lot of physical reactions in the body. I experience a whole spectrum of physical changes, everything from mild discomfort to, absolute rage, clenched fists and tight jaw, a very uncomfortable rush of adrenaline. You know that feeling where your heart's up here pounding in your face. My face can get very ugly and distorted. I'm sure some of you have seen that. I often speak louder than is actually necessary, with more sarcasm and more condescension, I notice, when I'm angry. There's more harsh and divisive speech. My body actions become more impulsive and jerky. It's like I can't sit still. It's like the urge. There's such a strong urge that's moving through the body. And I'm sure I radiate an angry vibe. I mean, I can feel it. I'm sure everyone else can too. And it takes much longer than I want to return to a relaxed state. That's a real disadvantage. It's not like we can just turn it like that. It takes a while for that energy to calm back down. I often end up with a headache and feel wiped out, and chances are good if I've been angry that day, I will be awake at 2 o'clock thinking about it. That's when I do my best processing. So that happens physically, but then emotionally and mentally, when I get angry, I'm at war with myself because on one hand, I know I don't want to do this. I know intellectually the disadvantages of anger. And yet at the same time, I'm determined that I must protect myself For me, it's a very strong protective mechanism, or at least it used to be. It doesn't serve me that way anymore. It doesn't protect anything. My thoughts become hyper vigilant and focused on what's not right or what needs to change. And it's usually not about me. It's usually about someone outside of myself. I feel victimized. I feel defensive. I want to blame someone else for my suffering and discomfort. I lose touch with more vulnerable feelings such as fear or hurt or sadness. Instead, I ruminate and I start building my court case. And, I catch myself and I say, stop it. No, it comes back again. I'm building that court case. It happened this way, and then that happened, and that person did that. And, I just go on and on until I get it really clear in my mind so that if anybody asks me, I can tell them clearly what happened. And I'm right, of course. So when I'm ruminating, I can't think clearly, and there's no room at all for love and compassion. At that time, I'm totally self-focused. It is motivated by self-centeredness, no doubt. And anger damages my self-confidence because I'm out of integrity with who I want to be, who I aspire to be. I feel bad about myself. I feel bad about my actions and my lack of self-control. So that's on the mental level. And then spiritually, when I'm angry, that's where it gets really scary because I lose sight of my refuge and my bodhicitta aspiration and destroy a lot of hard-earned merit. My mind will be distracted by the anger, so forget sitting down to do any formal practice. It'll be hours before I can actually be clear enough to get back to what needs to happen, doing my commitments or whatever. My angry thoughts and actions fuel the habit to be angry again in the future. That's probably one of the worst results of anger that we know of, is that it's self-perpetuating. And I will be on the receiving end of anger. This is one of the very motivating things for me about working with my own anger. I know I've created the causes to be in a situation where I have been on the receiving end of a lot of anger, and I don't want to do that again. If all the parts of an action are complete, with anger, I'm creating the causes for rebirths in the lower realms and in hostile, violent environments, like we see on the planet today, many areas of war and conflict. And I can damage the faith of others that others have in the Dharma by my bad example. I'm embarrassed when that happens. And bodhicitta is out the window when I'm angry, so I'm likely to break other precepts as well. And then when I think about how it damages relationships, when I'm angry, I feel really disconnected from others. There's no connection, there's no possibility, there's a great abyss between myself and the other person. And anger creates a lot of hurt and distrust among people. I damage the trust others have put in me. There's more suspicion and more tension in the relationship, Hurt me once, shame on you. Hurt me twice, shame on me. People don't start wanting to keep some distance. And anger can even end, and probably has ended, relationships for each of us at some point. So I'm trusting that I'm not alone in having these experiences. This is something that we can all relate to in some way or another. And so I am reminded that in the late 90s, Venerable Chödrön had her students at Dharma Friendship Foundation divide a piece of paper into 4 columns. Do you remember this, Venerable? We divided a piece of paper into 4 columns, and with these 4 categories: what happens to me physically when I get angry? What happens to me mentally, emotionally when I get angry? What happens to my relationships when I get angry? What happens to me spiritually when I get angry? And she had us fill that out as our homework that week. And I actually did my homework that week. And I kept adding to that list, that piece of paper. I had that piece of paper for years. And I noticed that when I read that piece of paper in the morning and I looked at it, I was very clear. Today, this is why I'm not going to indulge in anger, because this is what happens. This is like drinking a glass of bleach. I'm not going to do it. And it worked, because for a period of time, to some degree. So friends and family members started saying to me, hey, what are you doing? You're changing. You're not as angry. So it was working. It was working very well for me. And during that time, because I was so aware of the disadvantages of anger, that whenever I noticed my partner getting angry, or a family member getting angry, or a coworker getting angry, I would do whatever I could to ameliorate the situation, because I didn't want them to experience any of these disadvantages. That was a very beautiful side benefit of doing that practice. So somewhere along the lines, I lost that precious piece of paper with all the disadvantages of anger on it, unfortunately. And while I've led a number of people to do this exercise individually as well as in groups, each time I do it, I think, you should make a list again and work with it. And I haven't done that. So I wanted to use today's BBC to once again focus on these disadvantages so that I react to the urge of wanting to indulge in anger just like I would react to drinking a cup of household bleach. And maybe I can inspire you to do the same.